Women are a complete different creation than men. It's in the Bible. I'm not cutting men at all. But God made men out of the dust of the earth, and he made women from man. And so we are here to be an improvement to anything and everything in the world. We are here to bring laughter and joy, beauty and peace, and lots of details, right? My husband, sometimes I'll say things to him and he'll say, "Do you really see things in that much detail?" And I go, "Yes." And he goes, "That's really scary." Because then he realizes all the details that he's not doing or seeing that I'm seeing. And that's the beauty of it, right? Regardless of what you've been through, where you are, what's going on in your life tonight, today, God has good things for you, right? He really, really does. And his plan really is for men and women to get along with each other, to care about each other, to help each other. And regardless of whether you're married or not married or want to get married or don't want to get married, you are going to still be working with men in this world, right? They're around you everywhere, and you might as well learn to get along with them. But also, we need to be able to combat loneliness. We're in a world that there's a lot of loneliness. And a lot of that loneliness is because in a world of self-gratification, no one is satisfied and everyone is lonely. So all of us at times feel lonely. How many of you felt lonely before? Raise your hand. Yeah, we've all felt lonely. And you know, loneliness doesn't mean that you're not in with people. You can be with a crowd of people and still feel lonely. You can feel misunderstood. Loneliness really is a feeling that you're not really understood, or that there's no one with you, that you're the only one that sees this or feels this. It's sometimes feeling misunderstood. It can lead to feelings of anxiety and depression. It can lead to withdrawal from people and feeling there's no reason for your life. And this is not a good thing. Loneliness is not from God, and God says that he'll never leave you, he'll never forsake you. If he'll never leave you and he'll never forsake you, guess what? You're actually never alone. Even though we can feel alone, right? And there was a woman, starting back to the root of loneliness, there was a woman in a garden of love. How many of you would like a garden of love? Doesn't that sound like, woo, exotic, right? A garden of love. There was a woman in a garden of love. She had a perfect relationship, a man that loved her, a God that loved her who came and walked in the garden with her, this garden of love. So you imagine, you know, we all are worshiping God. We want to experience his presence and his power and feel God, right? Feel him. And we want to feel love. This woman actually didn't have to go, okay, let me shut out everything and worship God. God was actually in the garden with her. He came and walked in this garden with her. You know, last week I just experienced that birthday, and I had all my family with me, and they rented a pontoon boat and took me out with the kids. I don't know why they didn't let me drive the boat, but they didn't. My pregnant daughter, our 10 grandchildren were on the boat, and they threw me a party on the boat, and we saw dolphins, and literally these dolphins were coming up, and you know how Flipper, they, you know, come out of the water, for all of you old timers, you know, it was a little movie on, yeah, okay. Flipper, for you young people, was a dolphin who, you know, would flip up out of the water and he would talk to the people. Well, that's kind of how these dolphins did. Anyway, we had fun with them and all my grandkids, so much fun, you know. But boys and girls are different. Little boys are different. My little grandson, Dawson, you know, he and Journey were having a conversation, and she said she didn't want to get married. She wanted to stay home and live with her mom and dad. And Dawson said, "Not me. I'm going to grow up and get myself a wife." You know? So, yeah, and a lot of us get a wife or a husband. We don't know what to do with it after that, right? We don't know. So he's got a few things to learn, and the little grandkids, but it's just so fun to be around them, right? You just love God's plan for family and marriage, and it is a good plan. But in the garden, things got messed up. In that garden of love, some things went wrong. And so we want to fix what went wrong. God already did fix it, but we don't even know sometimes how it's been fixed and how to navigate through it. And many times as women, we don't get men and men don't get us. And if you're young today, you're single, there's single loneliness, there's married loneliness. Teens can be lonely. They have their whole life ahead of them. all of us can feel like we're alone. It's not about the season you're in or not in. Our little grandson, Shiloh, Polly and them came to stay with us because their driveway is almost a mile long and it's ice. So they spent the last few days with us. So we had family with us last week, and before that, the week before, my mom and dad were visiting with us, and we had a good time celebrating my dad's birthday. Then this week we have Shiloh, Polly, John, Zealand, and Ivory at our house. So we were like grandparenting quite a lot, right? And you start to see these little kids and their personalities. So last night, Gary read a story to the kids from his mind. He has these stories he's told all these years. They're like, tell us a story, Papa. And he starts telling them these stories, and they're just a little off. They're just a little off for my likings, right? So, the story is that there's a farmer who has hogs, and he needs to sell them to pay the payment for the farm, but he doesn't want to get rid of the hogs and completely sell them, so he chops one of their legs off, and he sells ham hocks. That's why I'm telling you these stories a little off. The kids cry laughing. They laugh so hard, but I've never been allowed to listen to the stories because he knows I would censor them. So anyway, so they're laughing upstairs, and I go and hear them laughing like I used to hear my kids when he would tell them Smitty detective stories. So there's Smitty Detective, who is, I think, a mouse or a chipmunk, and there's Ralph Smitterton, and he's some other kind of animal. Anyway, they have all these fun stories. But this morning, Shiloh was getting ready to go, and he went into Gary's office, and he was like, Papa, we got to go. And my husband says to him, because he said, I just want these kids to know I'm their grandfather. I love them. We realize the more you're around them, they need you. These grandkids need us. They need that second generation of affirmation. And so he said, Papa, I got to go with Mom. We're leaving. And Gary says to him, I'm going to miss you. And he looks at him, he goes, really? Isn't that the cutest thing? They need to know they're loved and they're missed. And we all want love. We all want attention. Children need it. Teens need it. Women need it. Men need it. All of us need it. And the more we've messed up, the more we need it. Because we all feel like we've fallen short, right? We all feel like we don't measure up. I feel that way. You feel that way. We all feel that way. And yet we're all trying to act like we got it together, right? Here's my social media picture. I took 6 of them and let's fix it, doctor it. No, let's not even post it. It's terrible. The older I get, I'm like, I don't want to post that. I want to post that. I don't want to post that. Scenery and children, right? Anyway, but there was a garden of love, and God created that garden of love, and he created it where he would fellowship with man, woman. He gave them to each other to love passionately and wonderfully. They had everything. There was nothing wrong. Nothing wrong. And yet they still allowed the enemy to lie to them, which created loneliness, right? Because as soon as they bought the lie, Eve bought the lie that, she saw the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and she thought, well, this looks good. And the serpent, Satan, lied to her and said, someone else has got a better life than your life. Look at their social media, right? And so she thought, well, I don't have everything I want, and this serpent's telling me I'll have more if I just do what he says. So she buys the lie. Then she goes to her husband and she says, hey, this looks good. And then he disobeyed God because he knew he had the intel, but God had already told him, do not eat from the knowledge of the tree of good and evil. So he knew. So she was deceived, but he was disobedient. And together they both messed up big time. So the garden of love turned into a garden of loneliness and brokenness. And God had to actually make them leave the garden, because if they continued to eat, if they ate again from the tree of eternal life, they would live eternally broken. Eternally broken. So it was by his goodness, his judgment came to say, he says, cursed are you because of you, the ground is cursed. It wasn't God wanting to do bad things. So religion has told us all these years, God's mad at us and wants to do bad things, hurt you, hit you over the head with a 2x4. I used to watch cartoons when I was a little kid, and whenever I saw Zeus with the thunderbolts throwing them, that was my picture of God. Anybody else have that picture of God? You're like, oh, he's mad at me. He's going to hit me. He's going to hurt me. No, that's not our Father. He's a good God. He's loving. He's a good dad. And so many of us have seen brokenness in our culture, in our world, in relationships. Maybe it was in your home growing up from your father. Maybe you were abandoned. Maybe you were rejected. Maybe there was fear of failure there. You never felt like you measured up. You're trying to perform for love and trying to get acceptance and make honor roll and be the best at this and the best at that. And then we could turn it around now with social media, and we try to do that on social media and perform for love there and try to look good and smell good and, have all the perfect life and everything, because we're trying to still fix what was broken in that garden of love that turned into a garden of loneliness. And so what did the man say when God showed up? God came to the garden and he said, why are you hiding? And that's what happens when sin and loneliness come in. They were hiding from God, who loved them, who cared for them. They were hiding from him. And they said, well, we were naked and we were ashamed. He said, who told you you were naked? Now, obviously, you know how it is as a mom, right? You say, did somebody eat out of the cookie jar? You already know. You just say that because you're trying to get a confession, right? God already knew. He's like, who told you that? Did you eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? They were trying to hide it. The Bible says that they actually sewed together fig leaves, fear, insecurity, and guilt, right? So what went from a garden of love turned into a fear, insecurity, unworthiness, guilt, shame, condemnation. And then what does he do? The man goes, the woman says, that serpent, he did it. He deceived me. And then the man goes, this woman you gave me, right? Does any of this sound familiar? In a world of self-gratification, no one is satisfied and everyone is lonely. That's where we're living right now in this world system. It's not where we have to live because of what Jesus did. David in the Psalms, he says, for I am lonely and afflicted. Turn to me and be gracious to me. Isn't God good? Because he is gracious. He is gracious.